Hi everyone, welcome to Lifepoint Church Online. So good to have you with us. Today we're going to be hearing from a panel about journeying with anxiety and depression. So have a listen.
So let me introduce my panel, because it's been I just said it's not going to be me talking, and then I talked for about 10 minutes. So we have got an amazing panel here. I'm going to start over here on my right. This is the amazing Steph Sweetman. She is a chaplain. She's a lecturer in chaplaincy, and she's actually someone who's personally experienced depression herself. Someone made a joke this morning in our panel. The reason she's depressed is because she's married to me. We're not going to joke about depression, okay? That's the last bad taste joke. And so, yeah, thanks, Steph. It was Stuart that made the joke, just to name and shame. Stuart Russell. Stuart has been part of our church congregation for a long time. He is a pastor for many, many years. He's a teacher right now, and he's also someone who struggled with depression. Steph or Stuart, is there anything else we need to know about you guys, by the way? Steph's got 3 kids, Stuart.
I've only got 3 kids that I know of. So
you made it weirder. I didn't think you could make it weirder than this morning, but you made it weirder.
I'm just trying to keep it light, okay? It's all good.
Okay. And we have, you might not know Dr. Lola Bird, but she's been coming to our morning congregation for a while. Lola is a GP, and she's been a GP for over 40 years. So incredibly experienced, and she's dealt with a lot of depression. So let's just welcome her to the stage as well. Okay, let's ask some questions. If you have them, text them in. My first question is, we were joking about it before, but there will be some people feeling a bit depressed tonight because they're teachers or they're students and they're about to go back to school tomorrow. How is that different from depression? We all feel sad, we've all got stress and stuff going on in our lives, and we've got difficulties. How is that different to kind of medical depression? And I guess I'll start with you, Lola.
So, good evening, everyone, and thanks for the privilege of being here. So, we all have times of stress in our life. We all have times of feeling down and sad. But medically, to make a diagnosis of depression, it's an illness that has symptoms lasting for at least 14 days. And I have a list of the symptoms on the slide, if we could have it up there just... So these are causes, family issues, etc. And then this is a definition of the symptoms that we would think indicate that someone's significantly depressed. So 14 days of low mood, fatigue, loss of motivation, withdrawal. Anhedonia means a loss of interest in anything or loss of ability to gain any pleasure from anything. And sometimes with depression there's feelings of guilt and failure and changes in thought pattern and so on, sleep's difficult, and occasionally there are other really weird symptoms. So those symptoms can be related to many other things, but that constellation of symptoms together over a period of time would generally constitute a diagnosis of depression.
So you'll see at least 4 of these for 14 days or something, and you'll go, I'm diagnosing you as depression.
Not just for a day or two, but going on for a length of time. Yes.
And just to stay with you for a moment, Lola, what brings depression on? What causes it?
Many things cause it. So before I answer that, I'll say that there are 2 types of depression, if we could put that slide up. So there is reactive depression, and that tends to be related to life events. So that can be some really serious thing, or it can be even just a minor life stress. And that sets off a series of reactions in a vulnerable person to slide down into depression. But there's another group of depressive illnesses that are lined there, called major endogenous or clinical depression, and that's a group like bipolar depression is in that group, and postnatal depression, and this other very serious disease called psychotic depression. Reactive depression tends to be a slightly less serious illness most of the time, but major depression, this second group, that's a profoundly debilitating, life-threatening, recurrent illness. And it's very hard to help people in a major depression apart from medical help.
Yeah, wow. So Steph and Stu, I've got you guys on the panel, one because you, in your pastoral careers, I'm sure have encountered many people struggling with this illness, but I know you two have struggled with it yourself at times. So can I just ask you, Stu, I'll start with you, what caused your depression and what was it like What was the experience like? And how were you like, oh, yeah, how'd you come to the decision that, yeah, there's something real seriously is wrong here? Like, this is an illness, not just kind of feeling a bit bad at the time.
I think most recently I was shocked when the doctor told me you have significant depression.
You were surprised the doctor
I was
told you that?
surprised.
Yeah, okay.
And I just thought, I can't believe this, really? Like, I knew that I wasn't going that well, but I wouldn't have put myself in that category. And after many sessions with her, we sort of came to the conclusion that it seems that I have developed a tolerance for those feelings, those thoughts, that, I guess, condition over a period of time. And so I could sort of reason out of it to say, well, life's hard, get on with it, get through it. But how did I know there was an issues? There were some warning signs for me. I guess for me, the causes of it. Do you want me to talk about causes or what it was like more?
Yeah, what caused yours?
The causes?
We can start there, yeah.
Probably, I think, an accumulation over a long period of time of a number of different things. One of them would be ongoing pressures in my work life. So changing careers can be, a big challenge, and that was one thing that I had been dealing with for several years leading up to this time. I also developed some food intolerances that affected my gut, and so there was some issues there that kind of contributed to that, and also just the faulty chemistry in my own body that is not producing the serotonin, which is the feel-good chemicals that your body should be producing, left me just unable, as much as I tried to muster happy feelings through doing something nice, something that I would usually enjoy, I just felt nothing. So, I knew that there was real issues there, but it's taken a while to actually, in retrospect, look back and go, okay, these were the big issues.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say you were surprised that you had depression. It was kind of like something that had to be told to you after taking some kind of test, or a doctor like Lola spoke with you. Yeah. Steph, I know a little bit about your story, well, a lot about your story, because I was right there in the middle of the whole thing, and I know it was, Steph and I were talking about this last night, kind of prepping for this, and we both just burst into tears and started crying again. Like, it's a soft point still for us. I can still remember being there on the bed with you while you told me you wanted to die, a lot. And it was just like, whoa, this is my wife. Like, this is not the happy person I used to know. So just tell us, first of all, like Stu, to tell us what caused your depression. I know you've had it a couple of times. And then, what was it like? What was that experience like, to give us an insight?
Yeah, sure. So I've been diagnosed with 2 different stages of depression. The first one was after I gave birth to our eldest son. He's 8 now, so that was 8 years ago, and I was diagnosed with postnatal depression. And then a second time, more recently, when I was pregnant with my 3rd child, and that lasted for probably the 9 months of pregnancy, and then another 1.5 years after that. So he's 2 now, so it's only been a recent sort of recovery from that stint, but. I was similar to Stu. When I was first diagnosed with my postnatal depression 8 years ago, I was quite shocked as well. I work as a high school chaplain, so I hear about these sorts of stories all the time. I'm often referring parents and kids to go and see a doctor that may be experiencing symptoms of depression. We have to get professional supervision as chaplains. We have to check in with a professional to basically just offload how we're going in the job, hearing all of that hectic stuff all the time. And it was when I was in one of these sessions with my psychologist that she actually did like a depression indicator that I had to fill out, and she told me that she thinks I was, just struggling with depression, and I was quite shocked because for me at that particular time, I wasn't doing the usual symptoms that I assumed would be a red flag for depression. I wasn't crying all the time. I wasn't, feeling like there was a big black dog following me around, that some people refer to. But the symptoms that I was experiencing was just that lack of joy and lack of hope. No matter what I did and no matter how much I tried to, do things that I knew would help my mental health or feel excited, I just couldn't do that. In fact, the idea of doing the things I usually loved, like hanging out with friends or exercising or adventuring, they all just seemed too hard, and they actually just made me angry all the time. I spent a lot of my time being really angry. And I noticed myself also just in conversation, I couldn't focus on anybody else but myself. Every conversation, I just heard myself talking about me and, how crap my life was and I'm so sad all the time. And that was a bit of a wake-up call for me too, was the fact that I couldn't give out to anybody else. It was just that, really low capacity of just trying to get through each day. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking a lot more about depression in our culture these days, which I think is really healthy, but I think there still is a huge stigma about it. I remember in the church a couple of years ago, people would say, "Oh, where's Steph? She's not here on a Sunday. Pastor's wife not coming to church." And I was, "Oh yeah, she's not doing very well." To a few close people, I said, "Yeah, she's struggling with depression." I remember people saying, "Oh, really? I don't," because she seems happy, she's smiling at church, she's dressed up nicely. Surely she's fine. She's not like crying all the time, not carrying a tissue box around or something like that. So it's like, surely she's okay. And so, yeah, it can sometimes be surprising who is actually struggling with this disease and how we can do it kind of behind the scenes. Let's just change gears for a second then and talk about the Christian perspective of depression. I've actually got a question here. You guys have already sent in 12 questions, so we're probably not going to get through all of these, but keep them coming in because they're really good. One question here just says, how do you reconcile depression with the promises of God? How do you reconcile it with what the Bible has to say about the fruit of the Spirit? Where in the Bible it says the fruit of the Spirit's joy and it's peace. And it's kindness. And it's actually really hard to be joyful and peaceful and even kind to other people because you've got nothing much in the tank. And, in the Bible it says, rejoice always. We always should be rejoicing. What do you guys think about how do we reconcile what does the Bible even say about depression? I mean, how do we reconcile that with this? Is depression a sin? Is it okay? Why don't we start, Stu, with you, if you have anything to say about that.
My GP, first of all, just to answer that, to start off by saying my GP said to me, depression is a disease of the nervous system. And that was the first time that, maybe I've been told before, but the first time that the penny dropped that, Stuart, this is not your fault.
Yeah, it's good.
Right? You did not bring this upon yourself. You did not, there's been numerous circumstances that have led to this. So what does a Christian do with disease? Yeah. Incurable disease, or a disease that is chronic and maybe lifelong or persistent or comes and goes. And so that's, I think, is the real issue there. And I also want to go back and say, well, what does the Bible actually mean when it says joy and peace and rejoice always? As I said this morning, rejoice always is actually not what the Bible says. In Philippians 4, it says rejoice in the Lord always. There's a big difference. I can't celebrate the fact that I feel like absolute garbage, but I can celebrate the fact and take heart in the fact that God is working for my good through the good and the bad, that God will never leave me or forsake me, that there is always strength. And, I was thinking just during the week about this, that, Paul had, the Apostle Paul, in 2 Corinthians, it says there that he had this issue that was staying with him all the time, and he pleaded to God. He said, I pleaded to God 3 times to take it away. And God said no. And God's words with him, Jesus' words to him were, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect or made complete in your weakness. So to say that, you've got an ongoing issue and, somehow that's a reflection upon your faith or the weakness of your faith or your immaturity or something like that, just doesn't hold up when you compare it to things like that.
Yeah. It's like saying to someone with a broken leg, where's your faith?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a disease.
Yeah.
It's not just something that someone's brought upon themselves because they're just a negative person. That doesn't help, by the way. It doesn't help.
Yeah.
But listen, we're all on a journey with different things.
Yeah.
And the connection between how we feel and how we think is very strong. And we need to pay attention to our thoughts and submit them to, well, is this really true? Joy, for example, you can be in the bottom of the pit and have joy. Joy is not necessarily being happy. Joy is having that deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that in the pit you have hope.
And could you... So I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but...
Finished.
Could you feel like could you feel that in the middle of the pit? Like I just remember, as I said, Steph in the middle of the pit. Like it's like nothing could get her out. There was no hope. Nothing was fun. Nothing was good. I remember, Steph, you couldn't even pray. You couldn't open your Bible. You couldn't even do all the things that we say to do as Christians, and it couldn't even do that. And did you still feel like you could have some kind of joy even in that?
You're talking to me?
Yes.
Yes.
And then I'll ask Steph.
Steph. See, again, I get back. We always connect joy to happy feelings.
Mm.
You read the Apostle Paul in, I think it's 2 Corinthians, and he says...
Chapter 13, yeah.
The stuff that he went through. Oh, good, great, let's have joy. I just got stoned in the last city I went to, and now I'm going to go to another city, and in there I know that I'm going to be persecuted and rejected and beaten up and all of that. Let's be joyful about that. That's ridiculous. Joy is something, happiness happens to you because of the circumstances, happy circumstances, but joy is a deep contentment and satisfaction in God. And
you felt like you had that during your struggle and battle with depression?
In my deepest pit, in the darkest time, I would be hanging by a thread, and I would say things like despairing, desperate.
Yeah.
And all I could hang on to is a prayer and Steph probably knows what this is like, God help me today.
Yeah.
God help me. But that's enough.
Yeah.
That little bit of faith is enough. I don't know how people get through it without God.
Mm. I want to hear from Lola, but Steph, can you just comment on that too, on what it's like to hold on to joy, hold on to what the Bible says about the truth in the middle of the pit of these feelings?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, there was definitely times in my journey where I felt like I could not pray, I could not speak words of praise or even to God. I was angry, I was sad. The worst part of my depression in this second stint was actually coincided with my pregnancy. I was severely sick with a condition called hyperemesis gravidarum, which means that pregnant women, it's like way more hardcore than morning sickness. I didn't get out of bed for 4 months. I was vomiting, not able to keep food down, and also going deaf. And so that was, a big thing that contributed to the depression. Just being in bed 24/7, it was horrifically traumatic. And I remember moments, those were the moments where I thought, oh, surely death is better than this. And in those moments, I couldn't pray, I couldn't worship. I did intentionally would just put on worship music beside my head to kind of like drone it into my ears and affect my soul. I had wonderful people come and pray over me, and the verse that got me through that time was in Romans 8:26, I think it is. It says, the Spirit makes up for our weaknesses. It intercedes on our behalf. And some of the language uses like it groans on our behalf when we are wordless. And so I knew that even though I didn't have anything to be able to still hang on to God, I wasn't even trusting him at the time because I was just so angry that he would allow me to go through this. I knew that the Spirit was interceding on my behalf, and I knew that he was there. there. I didn't understand why this was going on, and I couldn't muster up getting better, but I knew that the Spirit was interceding on my behalf. And, you know, joy is a funny word because, like Stu said, often we associate that with happy feelings. I would say that once I let go, I mean, I did a lot of reading in the book of Job just to kind of like, you know, get in that headspace with him. He had the worst of the worst thrown at him, and you know, in the end of that, God just kind of says to him, like, who are you to question me, Job? Like, I created the world. I pulled the stars into the sky. I know every animal and all of their movements. You know, who are you to question my ways? And that sounds a little bit harsh, but that was a real big wake-up call for me. And that was actually comforting to go, okay, God, you've got this. You know, I don't understand your ways in all of this, but I'm just going to try and trust you. And then what he gifted back to me was a release and a peace. And, you know, maybe that could be described as joy, because it was just this understanding that I was going to be okay, even in the pit of despair when I felt I wasn't okay.
Can I just add to that too? Because
No.
I just think them.
Yeah, sorry. No, you can. Do it.
Thank you, Dan. There were many days when I did not feel like God was even there. So, and while I can testify that there have been many days since where I have, but I just wanted to say that in case there's anyone out there who's thinking, I don't feel a thing. And all I could do was go to the promises of God and say, God, what have you said? That's what I've got to hang on to.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I've
That's
actually
one of our
got on
questions.
my bathroom wall, I've got key passages and key verses, promises
It's good.
that reminded me every time I went to the bathroom. They were up on the wall there, and I just hung on to God. That's all I could do,
Yeah.
even though it didn't feel like it was there. And He's faithful. He's
It
good.
must be a common thing. We've got verses all up in our bathroom too. So, but you guys have got faulty bowels, so it's probably spend a lot of time in the bathroom. So, it's a good place for it to be.
You talk to me about getting weird, mate. That's just like.
That's
Thanks.
seriously a good thing. It's good.
Thanks for that image. Appreciate that.
Someone actually asked that question that you just kind of answered, Stu. How do you give it over to God when you feel like God you can't even feel God in your life? You can't feel anything because you're actually struggling with depression. So you've kind of answered that question. Lola, just what do you, as a doctor and a Christian and someone who's spoken in churches and read the Bible a lot, I'm sure, how do you reconcile what the Bible says and your kind of medical diagnosis of depression? And what do you think the Bible says about it?
I think we've emphasised so far that depression is an illness. It's an illness like heart disease or diabetes. And I think we live in a fallen world. I think especially in the area of depression there is a spiritual battle. There's a battle that goes on out there in the heavenlies, as Job found out that we're not always aware of. And so I just wanted to say a couple of things that depression is not, and there's a slide about that says Christians and depression. I just wanted to point this out because I've known some Christians who've become depressed and they've gone to talk to their pastor or friends or to someone and they've come away feeling that wasn't helpful. So I wanted to say that someone who becomes depressed has not necessarily lost their faith, and it's not unrelated to lack of faith. Just the same as someone who has a heart attack hasn't failed in their Christian life. It's not related to lack of willpower, although there is lack of willpower. When you're terribly depressed, it's hard even to take a shower and to plan your day and to do whatever. But it's not just lack of willpower, it's much more than that. It's not self-pity. It's not a personal failure. Sometimes we're inclined to look at people depressed and think, gee, get on with it, get up and go, do something, get going. And we see it as a sort of like a personal failure on their part without understanding that they simply can't. They just can't get going. And the last thing I want to say is I don't believe it's demonic, okay? And so I think we might talk later on about what we can do to help people who are depressed.
Yeah, let's look at that now. So I guess we've established that depression is real. It's in the Bible. Stuart's already talked about a few different verses. These are great Christian saints struggling with depression, all right? So that's, in fact, when you look at the Psalms, if you've got a Bible with you, actually, you go look up Psalm 88, all right? If you just want to do something right now, Psalm 88, look it up on your phone and you'll see that is someone clearly struggling with depression. It's just, it just says, where are you, God? Why don't you listen to me, God? And the last line is, you expect in the Psalms it to get better, but I will rejoice always in the Lord. It doesn't even go there in Psalm 88, all right? Psalm 88, someone's still in the pit. And the last line is, if you just get your Bible out now, it says, and darkness is my only friend. Yep. That's pretty dark. Like, and you guys probably know what that feels like. It's like, all I've got left is darkness. I can't actually see anything good. God can be good even when we can't see that He's good. So we've established that. Let's talk about what we can do now, how we can help people with depression. But let's just stick, if you have depression, what are some of the things you can do? One of the questions someone sent in was where is it? How intentional do I have to be to heal from depression? What do I have to do? And how much responsibility is actually on me? Why don't we start, Lola, with you on that one when it comes to helping?
That varies a great deal with the severity of the depression and the type of depression. There are some people with a diagnosis of depression who don't have the motivation or the will to do anything. What I would say is depression is a progressive thing, and if you know you have that vulnerability and when you're in the early phase, you can work on it really well. So if we put up the slide that says, how can we help? These are all things that, if you look at we've talked about the first things about the stigma and shame, acknowledging that God's love and faithfulness doesn't depend on us, and we don't necessarily have to be happy all the time. But there are things that we can do when the depression is not quite so severe that will certainly help. So lifestyle management is the first thing. That's about a healthy diet and some regular exercise, trying to establish a sleep pattern, some time of relaxation, putting boundaries around your life, don't work excessively long hours, don't drink too much alcohol, and so on. And because we've got some young people in the audience here, I would say just be careful how much time you spend on a screen and what you're putting into your mind. Because what you
say, if you have someone in your life that you love that is, going through something like this, just letting them know that they are fully loved and fully accepted, even in the pit of their despair, like even in the pits of their depression, that you still love them and still accept them. That is really, really helpful. I mean, the practical stuff was really helpful for me when I was going through my stages. I had people come and pray over me. I had people come and just help me clean my house. Because that's the other thing, you can't do the things that would help you. Like if you had a decluttered house, that would probably help ease your mind, but you can't get up and do those things. And so people making meals for me, this incredible church family was a massive support for me. People that just loved on me and told me that it was okay to feel this way, and the practical help that they offered was absolutely life-changing. And I think being a part of a church community was just such an amazing support to me. I knew that I wasn't alone, and I knew that there were people that were just being graceful. They knew that I was struggling. They knew that, I was whinging again or whatever. It's not whinging, I was really struggling. But they were great. They're grace-filled and were just really accepting.
Yeah, that's good. Stu?
Just thinking about this question, I think immediately, the family that if you're living with your family, I think those family members can play a massive role in helping you recover. I remember coming home from the doctor that day that she had told me that I had depression, and I was just shattered. And I told Rochelle, and we went and sat out, and I just started to cry, and I just said, I'm sick of letting this family down because these things have been happening before. And she straight away said, we love you. And at the time I didn't sort of absorb that. But it was demonstrated over many weeks and months. And I think Rochelle took the long view that, hey, this is not going to be a quick fix. This is going to be a journey. And let's just take one day at a time, 1 week at a time, one appointment at a time, and work it through.
Yeah.
And I remember being on holidays, and our 3 boys that were with us didn't know, or didn't really know what was going on. And when Rochelle went out, I took the chance to sit down and tell them that I didn't want them to, because when you're depressed, you can get withdrawn and you don't socialise and you don't connect with people too quickly. And I said to them, look, this is what I've been struggling with, and I just want you to know that I am really interested in your lives. I'm really interested in what's going on for you. But it may come across sometimes that I'm not. And to just receive back from them, the 3 of them, just love, acceptance and hugs, and there was a lot of tears, was just awesome.
Yeah.
So I would say family, you guys play a massive role in people's recovery, but also friends and wise friends who can check in with you and say, how you going, or just thinking of you today, send you a text. I had a friend in Melbourne who used to text me every week or every few days, say, how you going today, praying for you, here's a Bible verse.
Yeah.
And sometimes I didn't get back to him for a little bit, but it just reminds you you're not on your own.
Yeah.
There's people here to walk the journey with you.
Yeah.
And I had other guys in the church that were the same, doing the same kind of things, catch up for a chat, texting, whatever. So
It's
it was
that kind of no pressure love.
No
Like,
pressure.
I love you, but there's no pressure.
and even
to
just
respond.
having, when there's social events going along and not feeling the pressure like you have to be someone else to be in that social setting, that you can just be not your usual self.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to mention, obviously, too, was just seeking professional help. Seeing my psychologist every month for the duration of that time when I was depressed was life-changing. And I know that, we've got members in our community that are studying counselling, and we've got people that regularly see counsellors, and I just want to affirm that and say that it's fantastic. I still go and see someone semi-regularly. We talk about all the time about going and getting a body physical checkup at our GP. It's so important to get a mental health checkup as well. And, seeing someone regularly to help me journey and overcome and, just kind of combat some of those lies and the spirals that I continue to believe, it was just life-changing for me as well.
Yeah, awesome. We're just running out of time, and I feel like we could just sit here and listen to these guys for ages. Can we just talk about something that we don't often talk about with depression? And it's something I've experienced, and that's the kind of hidden victim in depression, which is often the carer, the person, the loved one who's looking after the person with depression. There's a lot of pressure on them. I'm sure anyone who's had a loved one, and we have one question about how do I care for a spouse, how do I care for a friend, how do I care for someone who is going through depression? Can a marriage be healthy if one person is going through depression? We've had a lot of questions like that. And I guess, Lola, I'll ask you, do you have any advice for carers of people going through this, especially long-term, especially husbands or wives or people who are long-term going through this?
Depression is not an illness that is healed quickly, and sometimes it never really heals. Sometimes it grumbles on lifelong. And so for the spouse or carer for a depressed person, the thing you really, really, really need is patience and persistence, because sometimes it just seems such a long journey and nothing seems to be changing. But that's all you can do. Certainly you can pray for the person, if not with the person. And you can show acts of kindness and encouragement. You can just offer to be there. Can we go out for a coffee? Whatever we can do. But, don't feel rejected if it doesn't work. I think it takes a very long time for a depressed person sometimes to actually begin to improve. And sometimes it tests your patience and you just give up, They're just not responding, they're just being, they're just not trying, So patience is the thing.
Yeah, and I think for myself too, one of the big things in that journey was just understand I wasn't responsible for Steph's happiness, and I can't make Steph happy, and just going, God, over to you. And I still pray that prayer, God, over to you. I actually can't make Steph happy. I can't go in there and do some big thing, and actually it's not my responsibility. And I had to take time out to look after myself, because I actually found after months and months of this, I just found myself getting really down. So it's like I have to look after myself so that I could actually look after my wife. We've had heaps of questions. Sorry, we're almost out of time. Just two really quick things. We've had heaps of questions about treatment medically. Lola, should Christians take medication?
Yes, if they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So medication is not the first line of treatment for depression. So the first line of treatment, as Steph said, should be psychological care with a psychologist or counsellor. That really is the most healing thing, especially for Christians with a Christian counsellor. But yes, there are a range of medications for depression. They're very variable in their effectiveness and in their side effects, but they can be effective, and for some people they are really necessary. For some people they are life-affirming and life-preserving. Depression is a life-threatening illness. So if you have medical advice and you're told to take medication, you even think you need medication, don't be afraid to discuss it. It certainly has its place.
Steph, last question. It's about young people. So depression's on the rise. That's what we keep hearing. And it's in the rise in young people. You would see a lot of young people. You're working at this school. You've been a chaplain for many, many years. What can we do for young people in our lives that are starting to experience the depression? What can we do to help? What can we do with the youth and young adults who are struggling with depression?
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, doing things like this is fantastic. You know, I think addressing it, making it well known that it's a common thing for people to go through, particularly for young people, it's huge. There's hormone imbalances that happen with puberty. High school life is just really sucky. So, you know, circumstances and things like that too can bring on depression. I think, the more that we talk about it, it takes away that sometimes negative stigma. People sharing their personal stories, I know, is really effective, because it makes people feel like, oh, I'm not alone. That person over there who seems like they've got everything together, they've actually also, battled with this, I think is just really affirming. That love, unconditional love and acceptance, I think is a really big deal. If someone were to disclose to you, hey, I'm really down, it happens all the time, I, can't shake it, two things that you can do. First of all, reaffirm them, love them, unconditional, tell them that you're there to support them. But second of all is, just lightly and gently encouraging that they speak to a professional. Particularly for you guys who are in school, we are surrounded by safe adults that want to help, whether that's guidance officers, counsellors, chaplains, teachers, encouraging them to see someone who can then refer them on to a GP and counsellor is, the number one thing, because the wonderful thing about our country is that we are so well supported in mental health. There are so many different ways that they can access help, so just encouraging that.
So good. Can we just thank our panellists? They've done a great job. Thank you so much, guys. You guys can just leave your microphones there.
Thanks so much to that panel. That was really inspiring. Hey guys, it's been so great to have you with us. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you'd like to hear more of these videos from Lifepoint. We look forward to seeing you again next week.